And we got to remember that our government works for the folks. This comes down to supported, supporting. The government supports the people. The people are the supported entity here, and that's not the paradigm that's down there. So we have to change that paradigm. And the governor sets the tone for the state, period. He just does. Okay, and we have to believe that we are the greatest state in the nation, because we are.
And then Brent's going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll get started after that.
Let's bow our hearts together this evening. Father, we thank you for your grace and your mercy. We thank you, Lord, that you are the God who is in control. Lord, we look at what's going on around our nation and the world, and Lord, people can get awful worried and afraid, but we don't need to, because God, you are the one that we look to for help. So Lord, we thank you for Brent and his wife being here tonight. We ask you, Lord, to just bless this time, bless the food, all the hands that prepared it, Lord, and use it to nourish our body, and then use our bodies for your service. In Jesus' name, amen.
All right. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Born and unborn.
Yes, we're live. We're live. Okay, can you guys hear me okay in the back?
What?
All right, has everybody gotten chow over here? Man, it smells incredible. All right. You guys, thank you very much for your time tonight. I can assure you my time is no more valuable than yours, so I really do appreciate you guys coming out. So I am Brent Bien, and I am running for governor of the greatest state and the greatest nation in the history of the world. That's just what we are as Wyoming, and it's truly a privilege and a blessing to live in this state and to have this opportunity. I am a Wyoming native, a graduate of the University of Wyoming Engineering College. I was also at U.S. Naval War College. I'm a retired Marine Corps colonel, aviator, combat veteran. I've been married for almost 30 years, raised 3 wonderful daughters. And so I tell you what, I'm very privileged to be standing up here right now. I am a principled conservative. And what I mean by that is I'm someone who has an absolute unwavering belief. Unwavering is the key word there, and I know there's a lot of you guys out there that believe the same. Unwavering belief in individual sovereignty, self-governance, okay, the 2 principles around which our entire Constitution was written. American exceptionalism, because we are hands down the greatest nation in the history of the world. And absolute truth, okay, because God defines the rules, and that's just the way it is. And that's the way I will govern this state. I will tell you that I believe for too long that Wyoming's been sold out to the highest bidders. Okay, by the highest bidders, by politicians who lack the moral courage to defend our constitutional liberties, okay, and prevent our state from corporate takeover. And that's where we are right now. We see that taxpayer abuse, I think, is rampant. I think our spending's out of control. Our agriculture is being swallowed up by globalist interest. And quite frankly, folks, our education is well below where it should be. So my objective is to put people first again. This state runs best, it always has historically, when people are first. To restore principled conservative leadership, discipline, and accountability to Cheyenne. And specifically, and of course I need every warrior patriot to help me out with this, specifically it's to return Wyoming to the people. And what I'm talking about there is taxes to the taxpayer, education to the parents, elections to the voters, agriculture to the growers, and energy to Wyoming. But folks, it will take all of us to make this happen at every level of our state government. I got into this several years ago. Okay, I retired out of the Marine Corps at the end of 2019. Originally from Laramie, but I was living over in Sheridan at the time just because my wife wasn't a huge fan of the wind down in Laramie. But we came from Guam. My last duty station was on Guam. I was a senior Marine out there building a giant base. about $9 billion worth, and of course, we knew where all that money was going. At any given time, I could tell where every penny was going. Okay, so that's why when I look at the lack of accountability here with our state budget, to me, it's completely unacceptable. And this is simply a lack of leadership down at the executive level to make this happen. Picked up a job with Bighorn Airways. I was an aviator when I was in the Marine Corps, and picked up a job with Bighorn Airways over there in Sheridan. And I was doing a lot of home renovation also. And then the sitting governor shut our state down for COVID. Okay, that was completely unacceptable to me. Okay, then we had a special session later in 2020 where the legislature did nothing to protect our constitutional liberties. I said that was it. There's no way I'm going to spend 28 and a half years of my life defending our Constitution only to have it and have my liberties restricted in my state. It's like, this is my Wyoming. Nobody would run against him. So I said, I'm going to do it. Okay, so of course I ran. Things would have been a lot different had I won, but I didn't. But we ran a quick 5-month campaign. We still garnered about 30% of the vote back then. But what I will tell you is what I did learn so much, and this is the most beautiful state in the nation, without a doubt, is a lot of the concerns that the folks had then, and they're really not much different now. And one of those, of the many, okay, were over taxation. Okay, we are a blue-collar retirement state. That's just the way it is, and that's what makes Wyoming so great. It really is. But when I was getting these, whether they're phone calls or whenever I was hearing, particularly from the older folks, the retired folks, that they built their house in the 50s or the 60s or whatever the deal is, this house has been paid off for generations. They raised their family in that house, and now Social Security is not paying the tax. Or they're having to make these really tough decisions between putting food on the table or paying their taxes or whatever the deal is. I said, this is not my Wyoming. This is not America. This is not why we came over here from England 250 years ago, or even further than that, right? Religious liberty and private property rights. And so in the interim, over the last few years, we ran a ballot initiative. We put a PAC together. I was the chair of this PAC that ran a ballot initiative to reduce residential property tax by 50% of the assessed value of the primary residence of Wyoming residents. Okay, now folks, it's because of you guys in here and so many folks in here is the reason that ballot initiative will be on the November 2026 ballot. Okay, I urge you all to vote for that. We've got plenty of money in this state, and we'll go more into depth, as much depth as you guys want to do on these kind of things. It'll be on the last page. Okay, we haven't figured out the wording yet. We'll work with the AG on this, the Secretary of State, to make sure you guys know exactly what it is. The other thing that I was working with just an incredible group of people all around the state is to inform folks just how vulnerable our voting system is. Okay, and all the nuances associated with it. Okay, and I tell you, that's why when I say return elections to the voters, I want everybody in here to remember that our elections are the people's. Okay, we simply delegate administration of that to our government, but they are our elections. Okay, and if we're not happy with them, then we make sure we vote to get the right people in there to change this up. And then last summer, it's actually a little bit before then, but the question evolved over the last couple of years to, are you going to do it again? Meaning, are you going to run for governor again? To, will you do it again? And that connotes something completely different. Now, folks, I will be the first to tell you that I love flying. I love flying. Okay, but my freedom, your freedom is far more important than that. Because I will tell you, without our liberty, we have nothing. We really do. And I know there's some difficult times going on in the state. I'm not at all happy with the governance, pretty much from the local all the way up to the state level. It can be so much better. And we got to remember that our government works for the folks. This comes down to supported, supporting. The government supports the people. The people are the supported entity here, and that's not the paradigm that's down there. So we have to change that paradigm. And the governor sets the tone for the state, period. He just does. Okay, and we have to believe that we are the greatest state in the nation, because we are. Now, one thing I will tell you is tooling all over the state, hitting all these small towns, a lot of folks are dispirited. Okay, and I hate to see that. I hate to see that. I'm not going to say defeated, but dispirited. Okay, and we have to remember who we are. Okay, we're Americans. Okay, I mean, we are the greatest civilization in the history of the world. Okay, and the only way we can win, the only way we can change this paradigm is we have to believe how great we are, how great we as Wyoming Americans are. Okay, and get this government back in check to where it actually works for the people again. But, guys, this takes every level of government to do it. Every level of government. Okay, whether it's mayor, whether it's city council, whether it's clerks, commissioners, whether it's legislators, whether it's the top 5, whatever it is. And that's why when I say warrior patriots, I mean those people who really truly understand the value of our liberty and are willing to go to the mat for it. Because we got to remember, in this constitutional republic, okay, in this constitutional republic, God grants liberty and not government. Okay, and we got to be willing to go to the mat for that. And I tell you, that's why I'm standing here, because I do. You know, in my time in the Marine Corps, I was over in Bosnia in the mid-90s when it was hot, Kosovo the late 90s when it was hot, multiple trips to Iraq and then Afghanistan. And when you witness the end state of tyranny, okay, and then when you come back to this nation and you see how willing Americans are to give up their liberty for false narratives, the COVID thing, all these other things that we see out there, and it just kills me. I mean, it really hurts me. So that's why, you know, when I stand up here and I want to remind us all, I got to remind myself just how great we have it and how much I know that I've taken advantage of it. But with that, you know, we have a lot of responsibility with the liberty that we have. And we have to recognize that. We all have to get involved, and we all got to go do it. Okay, I really do believe that the 2026 election is the most important election in Wyoming history. I do. Just because of the trajectory we're on right now. When I talk about globalist initiatives or swallowing up our agriculture, that's exactly what I mean. Okay, we got these biodiversity things going on around the state right now. Folks, this is relatively new. It's under radar for the most part. This is well over $1 trillion industry right now. It's taking our ranches out of production. It's taking our farms out of production. Okay, and a lot of that is because this stuff is being traded on the global market. It's happening right here in Wyoming. Okay, this is why our energy policy will change immediately overnight. Because I know when I go back to our state seal, when I look at oil, when I look at mining, when I look at livestock, and when I look at grain, that built this state, and it's just as much of our past as it is the future. Okay, and we got to get back to the basics on this. Okay, we've seen a lot of these green projects coming into the state, and we know that they're not efficient. We know that the footprint, carbon footprint, whatever you want to call it, to actually build these things is never realized in the economics on the backside. It never is. Okay, but that whole thing has got to change. Okay, we've got to sit there and get back to our roots. And we've come so far in technology when it comes down to more efficient mining, more efficient drilling, more efficient, all sorts of these things. And we've got to do that. I know that you guys up here in Upton are looking at that rare earth element thing that's, you know, potentially coming. And I think that's great. We have to make those kind of things work. We have to make them work. Because everybody in here's got a cell phone. And that's the kind of stuff that's in that cell phone. We should never be dependent upon a foreign nation for any of those kind of things. We should be able to do it right here in America, and preferably right here in Wyoming. It's kind of like I was down at the Sinclair plant a couple of weeks ago. And it's like, where's all the waste going here? You know, and typically that waste gets transported all out of the state or shipped somewhere else to make plastics. And it's like, well, why don't we make plastics here in Wyoming? It's the same thing with your plant right here. And I don't know where a lot of this stuff's going. But there's so many other things we can do in here other than ruin our view sheds with windmills, okay, that don't bring really any revenue to this state. So what I'm asking you guys is, first question to you guys is, why are you here tonight? Why are you here? Anybody? Other than, well, we want to hear what you got to say. Why, is there anybody in here who's here for maybe because they're PO'd at what's going on? Anybody? Oh, come on, I know you guys.
I came for the sandwich.
She came for the sandwich. I tell you what, this looks good to go. Susan, thanks. Okay, so why are you guys here? Sir, go ahead.
Well, my wife and I are from California.
Okay.
We don't want to see Wyoming become
There you go.
California.
Where in California?
And
Here's my beach, Central Coast.
Okay, now I remember. Okay, I know we've talked before. Okay, all right. I'm totally on board. Go ahead.
Why are you so against solar and wind?
Well-
There are plug-in solar panels available that we can own right now to help offset our home electric cost. But
Are
the
you talking
electric
about-
companies are throttling that idea.
Are you talking
We're
about
the
personal
government.
electric? Are you talking about personal solar panels?
Yes.
I don't have any problem with that.
What about if I put a wind turbine for home use in my backyard?
Is it gonna be rezoned as industrial? Is there any direct
If
impact
it's
to it?
home use,
Just a home.
Yeah, well, so this is on private property, right?
that
You mean
is
like, are you
very
talking about one of these
possible.
giant 400-foot, 500
No,
foot
there
term?
is solar available. We can cover parking
I'm
garages
tracking.
with-
Private use, I have no problem with.
We could cover parking garages with solar panels.
Yeah, I'm not
It would help
opposed to
with
that.
cars.
Yeah.
Shade for people.
You bet.
Why are we not doing that? And we're just focusing on oil and coal. Why not diversify our energy sources?
In addition to the weekly printed version of the newsletter journal, we also promote our community and share important information on our award-winning website, newslj.com, and in our weekly email newsletter, Nuke Now. We also connect with readers through various social media platforms and invite you to check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can even take a look at a recent meeting of the City Council, School Board, or County Commission on our YouTube channel. We do hope that you will go to newslj.com and subscribe today, and we look forward to making all of our great content available to you. But regardless of your level of support, we thank you from the bottom of our hearts for doing your part to preserve a free and independent local press.
Why are we not doing that? And we're just focusing on oil and coal. Why not diversify our energy sources?
I never said I was opposed to that.
Yes, you did.
I'm opposed to taxpayer subsidies that go in to pay for all this.
I want my tax dollars to benefit me.
Okay, we're
If
great.
that cuts my electric bill, then yes. If it gets the corporations to not profit so much, then yes.
Have you seen the ratio of subsidies that go to that?
That's something that you should probably work on. Right?
You bet, and that's why you need to vote for the people that are gonna get rid of that. You bet. I don't have any problem with private solar, private wind.
How are you gonna get that passed then? That we can buy plug-in solar panels for our homes?
Well, you can do that right now.
No, you cannot. Not in
Well, shoot, I know
Wyoming.
plenty of people around this state that have solar
They're
panels on
not
their roof.
legal. They're not legal because our electric companies are saying they're not safe.
Most of the windmills out there now are solar charged. Go out to any ranch.
Yeah, and we know that, so each one of those ones that are out there about 400 feet, 400 to 500 feet, right? The 3 megawatt ones that were sitting out there, these are the ones I'm talking about. Okay, the ones that the taxpayers are paying for, that we're not getting any revenue off of.
Then you need to talk to electric companies. They're getting the profits off of this, not us peons.
That's what I'm talking about.
Then work on the subsidies. You haven't mentioned any of those until I mentioned that.
Because I haven't even gotten there yet.
All right, then move on.
Okay. Okay, all right. So what do you want to know?
Pay for your solar panels.
What do you want to know?
That's what she's looking for.
I want a legal way to buy solar panels that the electric companies can't say, oh no, you can't have that because we're not sure about the safety of it. Because solar.
Baseload power
according
needs to be changed
them-
back to our organic fuels. It just does. Okay, that's why, you understand the whole baseload power, right?
No.
Well, right now, we've got baseload power that really starts with these intermittent energies. Okay, the sun doesn't always shine. The wind always blows in Wyoming, but
That's why we
sometimes
have
it
this
blows.
thing called battery packs.
Okay, but do you understand what's going on with these things? We got to shut them down with heavy wind. Okay, because they can't generate wind because we'll overspin the turbines. So now we've got these things that never.
Have you seen the
Okay,
wind panel?
ma'am,
Let him finish.
okay. I'm on board. We can debate this one-on-one if you'd like. Okay, but I want to make sure the folks out here get the opportunity to speak.
Okay,
Okay,
hang on.
okay. What else?
Yeah, here, Brett. Or she's gonna,
What do we got? Is there a
the
question?
Wyoming Solar Act where you can have solar panels on your personal property.
Yeah.
And she has the citation. Yeah.
I just read that they.
What else, folks?
That's all right, I'll-
Ma'am,
I just came to find out what options we have
for,
for governor, and when we,
If that's okay.
get to voting,
Hmm.
I want to know who I'm voting for.
Okay, we're good to go. Have you, and everybody in here should research all the candidates who are running for all these offices. Everybody
I've
should.
never heard your name before. I didn't even know
Okay.
you'd run before, so I've never.
Well, it was tough. It was tough. It was a shoestring budget last time. I mean, it was my wife and I that were running all over the state. Bottom line is, I looked for somebody to run between Sheridan and Campbell County. And of course, I know these folks a lot better now, but nobody would do it. And I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. So that's why I ran. And of course, since then, I've been, this does come down to the consent of the government, what the folks are looking for. And I knew that taxes, elections, agriculture, our education, and our energy were huge issues then, and they're still the same issues now. And that's why I acted upon, along with so many people in here, to get a tax cut for the people to vote upon on our ballot, because it's such a huge thing. So we've got, folks, we're the wealthiest state per capita in the nation. We got $34 billion in the bank, $34 billion with a B. Okay, just last year, we made just shy of 1.9 billion in interest off of that. Okay, 1.9 billion in interest on that. All of residential property tax, all of it, okay, which is roughly about 3% of our annual revenue, which is a mere pittance for the most part. That's about $625 million. So just in interest alone off the $34 billion we have could be paid for 3 times over, okay, all of our residential. So there's a lot of narratives going out there right now that if we do any cuts in residential, that it's going to gut our schools, it's going to gut our fires, our EMS, all those kind of things, and that's simply not true. That'll never happen for one on my watch. Okay, the schools constitutionally have to be funded anyway. Okay, now with the other things, like this fire EMS, this is why we need to look at, and we're also the state with the largest per capita state government of any state in the nation. So we got to look at, okay, what are essential and non-essential services? We've got to look at this stuff pragmatically and objectively, because right now, folks, the trajectory we're on fiscally is completely unsustainable. It is. So as we're talking, just over the last 8 years, okay, our mining, let's just put it that way, okay, and we've got 400 years of gas, oil, coal, trona, uranium, everything underneath our feet. Okay, we do. But our mining's down about 18%. But even with that, just last year, that was about $1.4 billion of revenue. In wind, all we got was just over $4 million in revenue. So think about that. Okay, $4 million in wind versus $1.4 billion in just mining, not oil, just mining. Okay, that's a fraction of what we get. And again, this is the kind of stuff that built the state, and we've gotten so much more advanced in technology when it comes to mining, when it comes to refining, those kind of things, that, we need to get back to putting people first again. And because we've changed that energy policy, we've seen all of our taxes go through the roof. They have. Because the people are the easiest target on this one. It's always easy to raise the mill levy, whatever it is. And again, we have over 650 special districts in this state, and they all have taxing authority. So this is one of those things to where we got to put the power back in the hands of the people, because the people can spend their money so much better than the government can. And the thing is the money stays local most likely, or at least in the state for the most part. As soon all these taxes that are invested in that $34 billion, that's all in pixels, particularly, primarily under Vanguard, which of course BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, they all own each other. And it's all out of the state. Okay, so we got to keep this stuff in here. You guys know how to spend your money so much better than the government does. So that's what we're trying to do, is get this thing back with it. Okay, what else, folks? Elections? Anybody want to talk about elections? Go
You
ahead.
said that public education will be fully funded with the tax cuts that we're gonna get for property.
Because the Constitution says yes. That's right.
They just cut jobs here locally for our school system.
I know why.
Go ahead.
Because ADM's down. So students, oh, head count for students.
Yeah.
So we get
And so
21,000, we get about 22,000 per student. And I know because I work for the education system. And when I first started almost 8 years ago, we had like 70 kids coming in. Last year we had 38, and this year we're projected for 25. So that was the biggest reason for that.
Do they know why our enrollment's not that high?
Because people aren't moving into our town with children, and people aren't having kids anymore.
And
They're sending their kids to
because why?
public education.
They don't
That's
like
the
the
problem,
toxic
it's
curriculum.
busted.
What if those parents that are homeschooling their children aren't doing a good job?
What about,
I guess that's not my problem, if they decide to run for governor later or something?
I'm a homeschool mom, so
Not every homeschool parent is bad, I'm not saying
I
that.
know not every teacher
But-
is good. So you have to take it individually. You can't blanket
Broken.
it. You can't blanket school. I know smart kids in school.
I'd rather have our public education system fully funded than vouchers.
It is fully funded, it's all based on head count. So when it comes down distributed from the state, it gets distributed to the counties based on head count. And that all stemmed from a lawsuit between, that Washakie County did on Campbell County. Okay, because Campbell County is a much wealthier county than Washakie County. Okay, and that's how they had this redistribution, to make sure that all the schools are funded appropriately based on head count. So that's why they do have that funding. Sir?
So should they take $7,000 a year of taxpayer money to pay someone to homeschool their children?
Should they pay?
Take it out of our school system and pay the parents $7,000 a kid to keep your kid home and teach.
Are you talking like the ESAs?
Yeah.
Education, well, we knew that that wasn't gonna go anywhere, because you can't take public money and give it to a private individual. So that's why it's stuck in court right now, right? Now, should it happen? Competition brings out the best in everybody. You know, so if you're asking if that dollar should follow the parent's decision, I think there should. I think, now, one thing we gotta look at, though, is what's going on in Texas and what we're seeing in Arizona, where they do have these backpack fund type of things. Because a lot of that, some of that money is being used to build mosques and those kind of things around those states. Okay, and I don't want that here. Okay.
Just as a homeschool parent, most homeschoolers that I know don't want the money.
Yeah.
I don't want it, but why do I want it? I don't want my property taxes going to a broken system.
Right.
That's crazy.
That's right.
It's just like the government,
Right.
you know, we have to throw into Social Security that used to be voluntary.
Right.
Who wants a broke government saving money for themselves?
Oh, you're right.
It's the same thing when a
It is.
homeschooler looks at what's coming out of the public education. It's not that we did a great job, but yeah, why do I want to fund that when I know it's so broke?
No, you're absolutely right.
I don't want a kickback.
Yeah.
But I don't want to fund something that I'm not even participating.
Well, and you don't want the ties either, right?
Right.
Because it's one of those things that typically what we're getting is, well, if that money's going there, then we have to evaluate what's going on under that roof. We already have the ACT, the SAT, the GED, all these things, ASVAB. There's plenty of standardization. And, you know, bottom line is I do believe that parents are, you know, when I say return education to the parents, parents are the final arbitrator on that, what the parents want. But I agree with you.
Yeah, when you say that, I totally agree that education should be returned to the parents. But like 95% of our kids go to public school. So how do you fix how do you help our public schools? How do you help our parents that have kids in the public schools? Because we have, I mean, if we can take our kids out and homeschool, I'm good with that, but that leaves a bulk of our kids that are still going to public school, and I really don't want to sacrifice the bulk of our kids that go through.
I'm tracking. No, what I'm saying is, I'm not saying dissolve public education
Yeah.
by any means.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is that the parents, it really comes down to what the parents want best for their child. Okay, and right now, we're spending $22,000, not including capital construction. As soon as you put capital construction in there, it's actually about $35,000 annually per child. Is that, you know, we're spending more than any state around us. And until, you know, we should never accept anything less than being the top state in the nation, hands down. And so when you look at the metrics, you know, we were kind of talking about this earlier, 3 through 12. I mean, you know, we're lucky to hit 50 percentile. I mean, we've got 30% of the 8th graders that can read the level right now. I mean, that's completely unacceptable. You know, we have elected officials in this state, young ones, who do not know how to write cursive. You know, I mean, this should alarm everybody. Even my kids are long gone out of school, but it really alarms me. And so what I look at is, okay, what's really going on here? And it's tough. It's tough to figure out exactly what's going on. I think we see a bloated administrative level in the schools. Nearly every teacher, I believe, I'll probably say all, of course I haven't spoken with all the teachers in the state, but all the ones that I have spoken to, all they want to do is teach. They really do, but they're under this pressure from the administrative level to test to the test to the test. And then when these kids turn out to be 18, shoot, they can't even change a tire anymore. And they're not taught critical thinking. And a lot of this comes down to the curriculum that's in our schools and all the pressure that's being put on our teachers from the administrative level, which is typically all run by unions, whether it's the national union, and even though we're a right to work state, we still got unions in this state, union-like stuff, okay, the WEA, those kind of things. And so it comes down to, okay, we have to re-win the trust of the parents in the public school system. And it's the government's job to do that, just like with our elections, just like with our budgeting. It's the government's job to gain and garner the trust of the citizenry, not the other way around. And it's tough because not too many people trust it anymore. So when I look at our curricula, when I look at CRT, critical race theory, when I look at diversity, equity, inclusion, when I look at social emotional learning, when I look at Common Core, it is all Marxist based. All of it, which is completely antithetical to the way this country was founded. Completely, right? And of course, our Constitution strictly forbids sectarian curricula in our public school system. And sectarian is something that's directly associated with, or whatever, to a particular religion or political belief or ideology. And of course, Marxism is a political ideology. I mean, it's the basis for communism, for socialism, for fascism, for Nazism, for all of it. And it's completely antithetical to America, to our Constitution, because of course Marxism says that government grants your liberties. And of course and in this state, or in this country, God grants liberty. And it is one of those things to where this is going to take all of us to fix the public school system. But the parents have to be involved. Even us have to get more involved. But the PTAs used to check out the curriculum, when I was a kid. And the other paradigm there is that I know if I ever got in trouble, which I would hate to get in trouble because my dad was a Marine officer also, and I just hate for my dad to ever show up at school. But it was one of those things. It's, hey, what did you do to provoke your teacher? Well, I know if I ever got in trouble, which I would hate to get in trouble because my dad was a Marine officer also, and I just hate for my dad to ever show up at school. But it was one of those things. It's, hey, what did you do to provoke your teacher? Well, now it's, hey, teacher, what did you do to provoke my kid? And this is something that starts at home. And obviously there's some other things out there too. But so much of this really does start at home. But when I talk about the critical thinking, I kind of brought this up, is there's a push now with, I know my competitors, really to push for CTE, career technical education. Okay, because we've really taken a lot of the technical skills out of public education. Now, I'm on board to an extent. Okay, and this is where I draw the line, because if you really look at the model of this, it's very much a communist model. Because it'll pick some kid in the third grade and, hey, you're going to be a welder, for the rest of your life. Well, that's not what I want. Okay, I want a state of thinkers who know how to use their hands. Okay, so we got to incorporate all the critical thinking back into our public education. So when these kids get to be 18, for one, they love this country because we are going to do the Pledge of Allegiance in every public school in this state. That they're fiscally responsible. Okay, they understand how this country was built, that we're not a democracy. Okay, we are a constitutional republic. I think that's one of the most hurtful, false narratives that's out there to this nation, is that we're a democracy. Okay, we're 51% of the people who could take away the liberty of the other 49. Fortunately, in a constitutional republic, we know that even the individual is protected. That's what makes this country so great. And shoot, these kids would have the skills to start a business, whatever it is, but they don't have to go to college. Okay, college is one of those things, whether it's UW or whatever, that if they elect to go, they elect to go. Okay, but right now it's like we've been grooming these kids to go to these these liberal upper educated schools, post, the colleges. And of course, that's kind of a breeding ground for so much of this. And I will tell you that at UW, and again, I went to UW. I went through the college at UW there, or the engineering college. And I think we got to get rid of the tenure system. I really do, because that is one of the things that will really hold accountability to a lot of those professors there. Sir?
How does tenure keep you from being terminated?
How does temper?
It doesn't guarantee you a job, does it?
Well, no, but I think part of what it does though is when you look at how these it's almost like you get to a point where now you're vested. Okay, so there's more of a reluctance to get rid of that particular professor, whatever the deal is. So a lot of this does come down, whether it's the Board of Trustees, and I do believe that the Board of Trustees should be elected, vice appointed. That would take a constitutional change. And but a lot of these professors get in there, and if they're not teaching to the critical skills that we need in this state, say for student loans. Okay, I think that we got to really look at the kind of student loans that are coming out, and if they're not beneficial to this state, because that's really what UW was for, is to build those professions that best benefit Wyoming. Is that, let's take a look at these. I mean, should they get a student loan or not? I mean, if they're going to get basket weaving or gender studies or something like that does nothing for the state of Wyoming, then should we really grant that loan or not? And, you look at a lot of the professors down there and what's going on at that era and what's really benefiting the state. I mean, when we get back to the land grant, of course, we had the engineering, we had the business, those things. The agriculture, of course, has always been huge. And it's one of those things to where if there's being curricula that's offered that's not in benefiting the state, then the taxpayer in my book shouldn't be paying for it.
Still, you got a tenured teacher, and he's not doing what you want him to do. Can you get rid of him?
That comes down to the superintendent. That comes down to school board, right?
Comes down to the administration.
That's right.
And the school board, okay?
Right.
So who's not doing their job here?
Well, you're absolutely right. You are spot on. These school boards, somebody needs oversight. You are absolutely right. You're spot on. And this comes down to, again, the local communities particularly getting involved and saying, hey, this is what I'm hearing coming out of that school. Sir, you are spot on.
But
You're spot on.
Tenure does not guarantee you a job.
No, it doesn't. You're right. It doesn't guarantee you a job, but it does. I mean, that's that whole psychological thing. It's, hey, that's a tenured teacher. We can't go after that person, via the WA, whatever. You're right. No, you're right. I agree with you.
It just guarantees you rights that somebody can't come in and fire you because they don't like the way you wore your tie today.
Yeah.
They have to prove that you're either incompetent.
And it is much more of a difficult process, right?
Yes.
It is.
And that comes down to the school board.
That's right.
And administration. So if you've got bad teachers up here.
Yeah.
And believe me, I'm sure we do.
Yeah.
Then our administration is the ones that are at fault.
Ultimately, it's the people, right?
Yeah.
Because we do need oversight on the school boards. I mean, there's an incredible amount of money that's coming into these school boards.
But what I guess my point is, tenure isn't a bad thing.
Well,
All it does is
yeah.
guarantee that you get due process. They have to prove that you are not a worthy person to be teaching.
Okay, so in the private sector, okay, if you're working there for, say, retirement is 20 years, okay, and you're at 19 years and you're not performing, I mean, in the private sector, they can can you.
If
Right.
you're not performing.
Right.
But they can't come in and say, you didn't wear the right shoes today, goodbye.
Well, but we know 10 years is a little bit more than that. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
tenure isn't any more than that. It just guarantees me the right, you have to prove that I'm not doing my job. You have to prove it. That's.
Yeah. Were you in the school system, sir?
I've been a teacher.
Okay.
And all it does is guarantee me
Yeah.
the right to a fair hearing.
Yeah. Then why wouldn't that be granted to a brand new teacher?
I don't know.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good conversation. I'm tracking what you're saying. I think, go ahead.
All I'm saying is it levels the playing field. In this little town right here, if you get cross-threaded with the wrong family in this town, you're done. You're out of here.
Oh, I know. I tell you, the good old boy clubs, all this establishmentism that's around here, the nepotism, there's some nepotism, everything else. This is all around the state.
And tenure here kind of gives you some protection for somebody just wanting to go to scalp because they
Okay.
don't like you.
Right.
Thank you. I'm just gonna say one last thing on schools, and then I'm gonna ask you a quick question.
Okay.
Is like you said, it's not the buildings, it's not the teachers, it's not the shiny objects we fill these buildings with, it's the curriculum. That's why District 1 over here is bleeding out, it's $1 million over budget, and people are leaving that school because their kids are being indoctrinated by emotional learning, which is taught right down the street, wherever it is. And that's a Marxist ideology with gender, all that crap, DEI, no child moves ahead unless all childs move ahead. That's Marxism. Anyway, what's your opinion on data centers?
Well, so as an engineer and an aviator, I try to look at things as black and white as I can. So number one is what's the requirement, and number two is what's the purpose, right? What is the requirement for building data centers in Wyoming? I don't know. I haven't heard of a good reason yet. What's the purpose of these data centers?
You're asking for it.
Well, go ahead. No, go ahead. No, these are rhetorical questions. Go ahead.
They're there to collect data.
Okay.
Every data that goes out into the metasphere, they're gonna collect it. Whether you Fitbit watch or whatever you got, they're collecting it and storing it, and they're gonna, so, that's what they're for.
No, I'm tracking. Yeah, I'm tracking.
There's surveillance, they're gonna be used for surveillance.
So look at next door, Gillette, right? Gillette and Laramie are the two designated smart cities in this state. Okay, what's SMART? SMART's an acronym for surveillance, monitoring, analysis, whatever it is, tracking. Okay, so that's what a smart car is. That's a smartphone. That's everything else. And I look at that, and my thing with AI right now, and this is why I really believe that most in our legislature, if not all, I'll just say most, really don't recognize, not only don't they recognize the magnitude of the threat to the state and the nation, but I don't think they recognize the threat. Because with AI, if we don't put a box around this immediately, then we will lose our First and Fourth Amendment just like that, and then the rest of the Constitution goes. Okay, and that's why we have got to look at this stuff. And this stuff's already here. It's kind of like nuclear over in Kemmerer. It's already here, right? So it comes down to how do we protect the liberties of the folks? And nothing has come up on this. It's like when we look at elections, there's two ways to go on this. And they should be complementary. So you've got election integrity, and then you got voter integrity, right? So everybody's heard of the SAVE Act, right? That's up there in DC, right? And I'm on board to an extent, okay? And here's what I have a problem with, is that we are a breath away from digital ID. Okay, and that's why we elected on our PAC to go with election integrity. That's why we wanted to show everybody the vulnerabilities of our system, how we can actually fix this, those kind of things. Okay, but I will not allow digital ID in this state, nor will I allow central-based digital currency in this state. I just won't do it. Okay, it's the dollar, and that's the way it is. I don't want any programmable money out there that based on your carbon footprint. And this stuff's coming, folks. They're already anticipating in the EU, okay, this to be implemented by 2028. That's only 2 years from now. Okay, and right now here in this country, they're looking at potentially 2031, 2032. I do not want that to happen in this state. Yeah.
I don't know if anybody else has had it, but there's a vote survey going around, and they start out real innocently and would tell me they're not related to politics at all.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't very long before it was very understandable that it was Google trying to find out how we would feel towards having a data center in our area.
Oh, okay.
And it was an extensive vote survey.
What we're seeing, what we always hear is jobs, jobs, jobs. Okay, these are all temporary jobs. They're temporary construction jobs, right? These are not long-term type of jobs like you guys could potentially have up here if this rare earth, element thing actually goes. And we need to make that work because we, like I said before, we do not want to be dependent. But you're right. I mean, this stuff, it's all temporary kind of things. With it, we're hearing an article just came out with Kemmerer. Hey, Kemmerer is exploding, potentially exploding with 110 new jobs in Kemmerer. That's a big deal in Kemmerer. These are all construction jobs that once it's over, they're going to be gone. And then it comes down, okay, now it's a security officer deal. And how many nuclear engineers do we have running around Wyoming? Not too many of them. So when I'm looking at the kind of job stuff that I'm looking at is, first off, I think that the only role that government truly has in business, okay, is to get out of the way. To get out of the way, to deregulate, cut taxes, make sure we never do this ESG, which is kind of along the lines of of AI, or, that whole, the environmental social governance scoring system. It's all coupled together. And of course, the reason why I'm standing here is guarantee you'll never shut this state down again. Right? Because, for crying out loud, our Constitution was written at the kind of toward the end of a war there. There's no, if you don't shut it down then why in the world do you need to shut it down during COVID or something like that? But bottom line is that for the way I see this is government's only job is to set the conditions. Okay, and that's through taxes, that's through tax reform, that's through regulatory reform. We've got 73,000 regulations in this state, more than any surrounding state, for 580,000 of them. It's like, why do we have all these regulations in this state? And then again, government's job is not to sit there on the teeter-totter and balance it one way or the other. Okay, government really needs to completely get out of the way. The thing is we're so used to government being involved that it's like, holy mackerel, if government, gets out of it, people are going to go crazy. A lot of people will. But the thing is, guys, is we got to get this thing back to normal. None of my policies are regressive. All it is trying to get Wyoming back to normal. That's really what it is. Just back to normal. And some businesses will never, ever come to Wyoming. It's just like when some kids get out of school. They're going to leave. They're going to go to Florida. They're going to go to California, whatever the deal is. But if we can make it to where these small businesses not just exist, because we've got 81,000 small businesses across the state, but not just exist, but to grow, to have the potential to grow. Okay, my objective is to raise your standard of living, if you want it that way, by reducing your cost of living. And that's why taxes are such a huge thing in this. It's why all the reforms that I'm talking about. But the thing is this has to start at the local level. Okay, it has to start at the local level. If you guys aren't happy with your mayor, your city council, whatever it is, your school board, those kind of things, then you got to get rid of them. Okay, the thing is you got to replace them with somebody who's going to go in there and do the job. And that's the tough thing. And I'll be the first to tell you, I love flying, but I do know, my wife's telling me to take a drink here, hold on. But what I do know is that the value of my liberty is far greater than my personal needs. That's just the way it is, because I know without it, and you guys without yours, that somebody's got to stand up for this. Okay, we got to get back to our roots when it comes down to our founding documents, because our Constitution was written, both of them, to limit and to restrict government, not the people. Not the people. But all you see nowadays at any level of government is creative ways to circumnavigate the Constitution. And it's unbelievable kind of what's going on. Okay, what's the next question here, guys? Let me get a quick drink. Sorry about that. Okay, what do we got, ma'am?
Did you never get back to the election things?
Oh, sure. Okay. All right. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate that. So one of my favorite topics here is elections. Okay, so I want runoff elections. Everybody in here deserves the best and most qualified candidate that gets 51% of the vote. I want recall elections. Okay, you guys are a perfect example right here. Okay, in Weston County, but not the only example around the state. Okay, and I want hand tabulation of cast paper ballots to be the primary means, to be the governing means, okay, of determining that election. That's what I want. Now, I've been all over this state showing folks how to do hand tabulation. By the time they get done, they're like, well, shoot, how come we're not doing this? Well, this is what we used to do,
We used to have those tabulated by 9, 10 o'clock.
I don't think the county commissioner's intent is to close down the hospital. I'm
Well, they
dead
wouldn't
certain.
say that they did it. They would say the Department of Audit and the hospital through its its failures, that the hospital and the Department of Audit did it, and they were just the instrument, which is true, but they could be an instrument of defiance.
To help save it. Right. They need to be the instrument to help save it.
There's a reason that state law says the county commission shall do, and we'll end on this, okay? The law says the county commission shall take this measure, not to force the county commission to take this step, but to make it clear that only the county commission can take this step. The reason the law is written with the county commission shall is so that the state does not shut down a hospital, a water district, a something else.
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. So this all stemmed what we got now from the 2000 election. You guys probably remember that, the hanging chad between Bush Gore. And that started this whole thing with the Help America Vote Act, these kind of things. Next thing you know, we have these voting systems that nobody voted on to bring them in. But that's what we have. Okay, and I will tell you this, is we've got all the data from every county in this state from the 2024 election, both the primary and the general. Okay, and for the primary, not a single county tested their machines correctly. Not a single county. It was still certified. That election was still certified. For the general, arguably only one county, and that was Albany County, did it right, and the audit election was still certified. Folks, we've got all the data definitively. We know. We went back to 2022 and to try to get as much data as we could. Same thing. And then even further back. Okay, but the statute is that you got to keep that data for 22 months. So fortunately, some of these counties were holding on to this. The thing here was never to go after the clerks. It's just like, holy mackerel, this is how vulnerable this is. Now, CISA, you know, the Cyber Information Security Agency, they said the number one issue with our elections is employee negligence. Because if you look at how you got to do all this, I mean, our clerks have to be rocket scientists to run these things, to do it exactly right, right? We've kind of set them up that way. And so we've never been gunning for the clerks on this. The thing is our elections are critical. Okay, it's one thing for every vote to count, but it's something entirely different for every vote to count for the intended recipient. And we don't audit elections in this state. And I'm talking the full-blown hand count audit. We don't do it. We've never done it since 1890. Okay, so that's one of the things here. It's like I say, we have to make sure that the input or the output matches the input. Okay, and we know that definitively with hand count. There's nothing subjective about it. With all the controls that's actually put over that on particularly the method we're teaching, it's a piece of cake. And the people are involved in that, yet, you know, and it is one of those things to where the people right now going around the state, this comes down to trust. Okay, it comes down to trust. So the number, and unfortunately we weren't keeping stats on this, but the number one reason we found that people who used to participate in the electoral process no longer do it is because they don't trust the machines. Okay? And that's the governing reason. Okay, the governing reason. And those who still do participate, this is the governing reason now that we found, do it out of their patriotic duty, but they still don't trust the system. Now, that's just the predominant reason. There's other reasons out there, but that's the governing reasons that we found. And this should be nonpartisan. It's just like cutting taxes should be nonpartisan. These are nonpartisan issues. We should all want to know that our vote is actually going to the intended recipient. And that's what we're after here. That's what we're after. It's one reason why our founders gave us 2.5 months, right, between election and inauguration to figure this stuff out and make sure we do it right. And we can do this. We can do it. And again, the people own the elections. Okay, Article 6 in our Constitution, the legislature is responsible for elections purity. And of course, then via statute, the Secretary of State is responsible for elections uniformity, which delegates down to the counties. But folks, that's us, right? I mean, we are the ones that own this. So if we want this to change, then we got to make it change. I will tell you, as the governor of the state, as a member of the state canvassing board, not to chair because that's the Secretary of State. But as long as we're doing elections the way we're still doing them right now, okay, nothing's going to change for 2026. Okay, but as long as we're doing this as governor, I will never vote to certify an election in this state as long as we're doing it the same way. Along with our poll books. Okay, they're all electronic, hooked up to DMV. We knew before Tulsi Gabbard came out and said it. We had a good idea that Venezuela, Germany, and some of these other nations were involved in our elections. Now all of a sudden she came out, or not all of a sudden, but over the past year she came out and said the same thing. Okay. So I want that fixed. We should all want that fixed in here. Okay, we should all want it fixed. Okay, so ma'am, did that answer your question? Okay, thanks. What else?
I was talking to you earlier today about departments and the control the governor has over the departments. You mentioned the budget. Now, the question would be, where would you cut budgets in what departments?
Well, Carl, come on. Well, I will tell you this, we have a big budget, right? So we've over-collected roughly about $9 billion over the last few years. That's a lot of money. And you got to wonder out why this is happening. But I will tell you, before cuts come, okay, some of this stuff's going to be simultaneous. I want to do a full-blown budgetary audit on this state. Okay, something we haven't done since 1989, and I was a junior down at UW at the time. That's when we changed from state examiner to state auditor, and then undercut a lot of those authorities with the auditor. I fully recognize that municipalities do audits via certain F forms. Got it. Those are typically self-audits. Okay, but when I look at cuts across the board, depending upon what it is, the first thing I want to do is I want to open the books on all this to make sure that every dollar is being spent statutorily, every tax dollar is being spent statutorily. We don't know that right now. We don't, and this is an accountability issue. So I'm not going to go out right now and say, well, this is going to be cut, this is going to be cut, this is going to be cut. I do think that there's no reason why we couldn't do a 5 or 10% cut across the board, but I don't know. I want to make sure first, okay, that this happens. And first thing I'm going to do is target property taxes, residential property tax first. I want people to stay in their home, to be able to stay in their home primarily. And then we'll look at some of these other things, but I really want to see what's really going on. I get it. I get hit from the left, which I expect, but I also get hit from the right on this one. Here's what I'll tell you is, as a commander in my prior life as a Marine, I'd want everything audited, everything. Whether it's equipment, whether it's fiscal, whatever it is, I'd want everything audited because I want to know where my zero is. I want to know where my starting point is. And it's no different here. It's the same concept, obviously at a different scale. But when I sit there and I look at a construction project I was directly involved in or overseeing that was $9 billion, and I knew where all that money was going, I don't know why in the world we can't do that here in the state, So that remains to be seen, on what's going to happen. But we do need to get fiscal responsibility put back in this state. We do.
Didn't we just have a problem with the state capital budget on the remodel?
You talk about the $300 million that we spent now. Yeah.
Just real quick, I would cut government through attrition. You wouldn't have to cut any jobs, people retire, you just don't replace them. But that's not my question.
I've thought about that too.
And I don't know if this is even fixable, but it's one of the greatest threats to our state right now. It's rural versus urban. All right? And it's going to affect your campaign, probably.
Yeah.
Conservative people are people that appeal to the rural parts of our state. Our urban centers are becoming more liberal and becoming more popular. And it's going to come a time where I don't know if we can overcome that. And I'm asking you, again, I don't know if there's an answer to this because it may be too far gone.
Well, I fully recognize, and boy, man, please don't say too far gone. I gotta believe we can fix it, right? I gotta believe we can do it. I gotta believe, oh man. No, but I'm with you. I'm with you what you're saying. And that's typical, right? So the heavy populated states relative to the low, one of those things, and you're absolutely right. Then you take it down to a next level and you're spot on. We've got Mountain, Wyoming versus, Laramie or something like that. I got it. And one of the things I've been wanting to do is, and again, I love this state. I'm originally from Laramie. I worked ranches over there and a ranch over there in particular near Arlington for a while. And so I'm real familiar with that area. And what I've seen is that nobody's listening to the folks out in these small towns. I mean, it's like, you got to be kidding me. I get this from folks all the time. Well, my legislator this, so-and-so is this. And I'm like, well, and so I go to those legislators and I'm like, well, if you're not going to represent them, I will. And what the crazy thing is last election in 2024, a lot of these guys are calling me up looking for an endorsement. I'm like, guys, I'm not an elected official. Why are you looking for my endorsement? This is around the state. It's like, well, I'm not elected, But I think what it was is that, we listen to the folks. I listen to the folks with some incredible people. And we took action with the taxes. We took action with the elections. And we made these governing issues in our legislature. And this was a team thing. I fully recognize that. Believe me, I could have never done that on my own. And it was one of those things to where, hey, look, if you're not going to listen to these folks, then I'll do it. I'll represent them. We'll represent them. So, I will never discount these small communities. I will never discount the small towns. And it pains me really, like down in Carbon County and some of these counties that were so based on oil or mining or whatever it is, these towns are drying up, and that's a direct result of changing this energy policy to these Green New Deal projects, right? But again, then we got to get into the 21st century. That's why I want to take our budgeting process into the 21st century so we can change these funding models to where we can still pay for this stuff, or what's required, those required things, with the money that we have. So, I recognize that. I recognize, and you always see it on whether it's AI or whatever the thing is, how do you win Wyoming? Well, you got to take Laramie County, you got to take Albany County, you got to take Natrona County. If you got those three, you're good to go. Well, for crying out loud, just like you're saying. So we were talking earlier, should there be like an electoral college process set up in the state? I don't know. But it's something we were kind of playing around with a while back. Can we do that? It's kind of like, I know you guys here with your representation, your legislative representation in this county. And lack thereof, right? Lack thereof. Yeah, and it's one of those things, we need to take a look at all this stuff, to make sure that the people's voices are being heard, because it is about putting people first again and doing it. But, I'm not too worried about it. I'm really not. I'm not, because this is an incredible campaign. The people associated with this campaign, they are all volunteers. Not a soul is getting paid for this. I don't have any money to pay for them like that. And of course, we need as much money as we can, and every single penny goes to advertising. Every single penny goes to advertising. None goes to travel, none goes to hotels, none goes to any of that stuff. Every single penny goes to advertising, buying signs, the literature, those kind of things. Not a single penny goes anywhere. And the reason why I know that is because, I'm the chair of the thing, and I account for every penny. But the whole thing is I'll go to all these things. I've been up to Recluse. You guys know where Recluse is, population 7, and we ended up spending, 2.5 hours out there, a while back. Same thing down in Bags, same thing in Elk Mountain. Those folks need to be heard. And they have some incredible ideas, just like you guys do. But nobody's listening to these people. Go ahead. Any more? No. Did that?
I was just gonna say, you don't have a campaign headquarters in Massachusetts?
Well, I tell you what, we've got a core of 5. One of those, including my wife.
I know somebody that does.
Yeah, I do too. No, we got we call her our .com, our campaign operations manager. She's at Thermopolis. We got another key folk there. He's in Story. And of course, I'm over in Cody. My wife and I are both over in Cody. So it's one of those things that we were kind of talking about this earlier. I can't remember what we were talking about. That to somebody outside of the state, or that lives in a smaller state, something that's 50 or 100 miles away is just like, oh my gosh, that's so far away. Well, shoot, 100 miles is nothing, because we travel so much. And Wyoming, the average driver here drives 23,000 miles annually, more than any other state in the nation. So, but no, I do not have a campaign manager from Massachusetts. I do
They
not.
excel in cheating in elections.
That's right.
I know, I lived there 60 years.
Oh, yeah.
Going back to representation in rural and urban, one of our senators, the head of the corporations committee, kind of got after somebody and said, do you think that you counties are like the states and that you deserve representation? And I kind of came back on that and said, we absolutely do deserve representation. And our Constitution guarantees that every county is supposed to have one senator and one representative. And so that just goes to show you that sometimes even our elected officials aren't protecting our liberties and our rights that are set forth in the Constitution.
You're right. And you got to ask yourself, why are they not doing that? They run on all these things, say, I'm going to go down there and do this stuff, and then they don't. And they all take an oath. But for some reason, that oath goes away. Well, folks, the oath I took, May 11th, 1991, when I was commissioned in the Marine Corps, it just doesn't expire. You know, and I know it's a little bit different than what we got down there when you get sworn in, but it's still the same thing. And you got to wonder why that's happening. There's a lot of influences down there, whether they're the NGOs, the associations, the nonprofits, all these kind of things that are happening, the bureaucracy that we got down there. And it's very similar when you start getting into, if you working for the federal government, where you get these, you get these folks who are civilian contractors, not contractors, but like civilian employees of the government. And then you get some guy who wants to come in there and change things up, and all they do is go, well, his term will be up in 3 or 4 years. So they just wait you out.
The new store. This is the one-stop shop. We have a pharmacy. We have a bootlegger's liquor. The deli, the food that you can get at a lunchtime is so amazing. The coffee shop. Certain Friday mornings, there's 30 people sitting here in all these chairs. This is the hub for people to come and visit, have their coffee, have their donuts. It's amazing what this area has done. Totally amazing.
And I know, I'm fully aware of the challenges that are going to be down there to do this. And I don't know why that happens to so many. I mean, I think in this last legislative session, we lost 12 what looked to be conservative votes on some things. And I couldn't figure out why these guys turned. I don't know what happened. And that's why, with tax relief, whatever, addressing tax and election issues, that nothing came out of this legislative session. So I was extremely disappointed, with it. And but this is why, my litmus for the folks that I've selected so many of these guys, and of course I'm for streamlined staff. So that's what we're going to do. But again, we got a lot of these, kind of like you were talking, let attrition take its role, not backfill it. And everybody has self-interest simply because we're human, right? But the interest of these people has to be secondary to everything in this state. Has to be. And I know these people personally, that, we already have kind of earmarked for some of these spots. Our AG is an AG that this state is quite, as it's going to be an awakening for a lot of folks. A lot of folks that aren't playing by the rules in this state. And he'll go after me too. I know it will, which is good. So I don't know, I think it's real easy to go down that way, Sue. It really is. And this is when I talk principled conservative. I'm talking, and when I say unwavering, it has to be unwavering. It does. And so, stuff to say.
You brought up the AG. Mm-hmm. Why don't we have an elected AG in this state?
It's a great question. It's a great question.
I want an AG that feels like, he's going to work for me, not for the government.
Right. Yeah. Who in here wants an elected AG? Anybody? Okay. I'm in agreement with you. I think, and it's one of those things. Not everybody's going to want that. I get it. But it's the thing is there has to be accountability to against the executive if necessary, or anything else. That AG has to be able to be resolute in his own right, his or her own right. Has to be able to represent the people, because if the people are going to elect him or her, that that's where the loyalties lie, and not with additional adjacent government agencies.
Process to go through.
Well, it'd be a constitutional process. It's kind of like we did back when we changed the auditor, or I'm sorry, the examiner to the auditor. So it would be, and the thing is in this state, in this state, the people cannot initiate a constitutional change. So, I mean, it's one of those things. We can get our legislators to do it. It's kind of like Amendment A. Remember Amendment A last year, you guys? Amendment A, and I was all over the state telling people, do not vote for Amendment A, because all it does is give our legislators, give our government more ability to tax the people, because it would break out. They could, break out a fourth class of property for taxation. Didn't want it. Okay. But it went anyway. So, I mean, these guys were able to do something like that. So why can't we do this other thing? Now, that would probably be a little bit bigger of a process, because that would govern a lot more statutes and everything else that we have. But it's one of those things that if we want it to happen, all we got to do is sit down and make it happen, and do those things and put it to the people for a vote.
Another issue. I was shocked to find out that basically the governor was the one that chose our Supreme Court justices in Wyoming. And I had no idea. I wasn't raised in Wyoming. But that really shocked me that that wasn't a legislative thing. And I know Sherry Steinmetz tried to put forward legislation that it would have to go through the Senate to be approved rather than the governor picking them. And which sounded like a great idea to me, but it died because it's a budget year and nobody would pay any attention to it.
Right.
How would you be supportive of that?
Oh, ma'am, I've been campaigning on that. Absolutely. Oh, I'm sorry, let's finish your
Yeah,
question.
that we just need to have legislative input and that no governor should have that much power and that much discretion.
Well, there's no confirmation process, whether it's, the people somehow have to be involved in it. That's the way I look at it. Now, a while back, we used to, I think this was in the early 70s, we used to have it to where we elected our judges. And I can't remember which ones, whether it was just limited to Supreme Court or what. And then it was changed back then to what the process is now, to where the governor nominates, okay, and then we goes through a panel of 3 folks that he appoints, and then the state bar panel of 3, I believe, okay, and then of course you have the Supreme Court justice that kind of goes and makes sure a few things go right. So, but bottom line, it never really leaves the executive branch. Okay, now I'm not in favor of a popular election for our judges simply because the people don't even research gubernatorial candidates. Okay? But I do believe there has to be a legislative confirmation process on this. Okay, and I am supportive of it. If you just look at the past couple of decisions that have come out of our Supreme Court, the one and then the one on Johnson County, where the people do not have standing to see how their tax money is being spent, which is going to hit all 22 other counties as a precedent. Okay? The people sued, the county, and it was laid out black and white that the people had the authority to see how their tax money is being spent because Johnson County had failed their internal audit so many years in a row, like 7 or 8 years in a row. The Supreme Court said, no, the people don't have standing. Okay. This is what I'm talking about. So it's one of those things that, everybody in here deserves to know how all Weston County tax dollars are spent, just like in every other county. So it's one of those things. It's like, why is this happening? And we shouldn't be surprised. We can be appalled, but we shouldn't be surprised. So yes, I'm totally in favor of it. Totally in favor of it. Oh, you're talking a lot.
Can you speak up a little bit, please?
Their policies on 5 or have written, I can give you an example. During the COVID scam, our parks went to our state park.
We can't hear you, I'm sorry.
Carl, can you restate that question?
What's that?
Just restate for this.
Okay, I'm gonna have to back up, so I gotta remember. I mentioned a audit of the books to find out where the money's being spent. My thinking here is an audit of the bureaucracy in the different departments for the policies written or implied. And I was willing to give an example, and that would be during the COVID scam, we went to reservation-only campsites in our state parks. You can go through a computer to do that. Get online, make an account. If you want a campground, then you have to pay through the computer. Anyway, to get further on with my thought here is, when that came about, I did some research on the company that was in control who they farmed it out to. Okay, they farmed it out to a company in Texas. So I went to their website. That company in Texas was affiliated with a company in China. So that's my point, is how many are farmed out like that, and who's in control, and who does what with the information, not only that, and the money. Where does it go?
I guess we'll find out, right?
is it worth a policy audit?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, folks, an audit's just not one of those things where you bring a group of people in for a few days and then you figure it all out. The first one's always the hardest, and this is going to be a multi-layered thing. And it's going to be difficult. And it's one of those things, folks, that I'm going to get smoked by the media, by everybody else on this. It's not going to be pretty, okay? But what I need you guys, if you guys actually believe that that's what we need to do, and I firmly believe it, that's what I want to have happen, that, you're going to have to bear with it for a little bit, okay? Because it's not going to be pretty. It's not, to do it and to figure it all out, because nobody wants to pull the covers back. Nobody wants to. But we have to do it. We have to do it. So whether it's policy audit, all those things across the board, departmental audits, all those things, and that's how we'll start doing this, is, we're going to figure out those ones that actually need to go, and start with the most critical ones and then work from there. And I think one of the best ways to figure it out is you do a budgetary cut, and whoever's squeaking the loudest is like, why are you squeaking the loudest? One of those things. It's all tactics, right? But it's going to be a difficult process. It'll take a while, but we got plenty of money to pay for this. Plenty of money to pay for it, and the people in here deserve to see it. You do. Sorry.
Back to windmills.
Okay.
Where do you stand on the disposal of them, and our government letting them bury them in Casper? And I mean, the solar panels sterilize the ground.
They do.
We don't know what this is going to do.
That's right.
We continue to bury all these things because they can't dispose of them. They're non-disposable.
That's right.
That's how green they are.
That's right. That's right. That's a good point. Yeah.
A good point.
So where do I stand on this? Oh, I'm absolutely opposed to all of this. And this is why each year, the typical 3 megawatt windmill that we have out there, and that's typically what we have across the state, each one of those sheds between 135 and 140 pounds of epoxy resins that are on the front of these blades. It keeps it all together, right? Now, every place in this state has some sort of drainage. Has some sort of drainage, right? Every place in the state, every place in the nation, unless you're in the middle of Death Valley, right? And so somehow that leaches down there, and we know that parts per million, this is very toxic stuff, particularly if it gets in our water system. So now we're burying these things. And I will tell you, folks, this is one reason why, when it comes down to bringing nuclear here, I do not want Wyoming to be a dumping ground. I mean, the designated place for the storage of long-term storage of nuclear waste. DOE has got to come up with that solution somewhere out of the state of Wyoming, because we're already a dumping ground for all the windmill blades, right? And so the slib's going to look quite a bit different. On state lands, it's just like the answer is no. Okay, now the Industrial Siting Council is going to be changed out, most likely, okay? That's a 6-member board that's pretty much been rubber stamping all of these wind and all these green projects. Right? And of course, we don't really have any statewide regulation on the implementation, the construction of these, any regulations on them. Now, here's what I will tell you, folks. In North Carolina, okay, there was a huge push to put windmills, okay, not on the Outer Banks, because that's a national seashore, but on this side of the intercoastal. Well, I heard about this thing. So how do we fight this? But it had to be objective. How do we fight this? I'm a colonel in the Marine Corps. None of these things were ever successful. Hey, I'll do it. I'll do a mitigation response team to get your point, because I'll tell you how this ties in. You got 90 days to do it. I happen to be doing this over Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's, where half the guys are gone, right? And it's like, holy mackerel. So a team of 40 got shrunk down to 6. I was one of those guys. The other guys were pros from Dover on all this stuff. Day 89 comes along. It was something like that, 89 or so, and we had this was the largest wind energy developer in the nation at the time. There were 6 to 7 other developers that were right behind them in the permitting process. So this was huge visibility. These things had never worked before. Mitigation response team, and I was told, well, it's just a check in the block. And I'm like, oh, that doesn't work with me. Okay, we're going to somehow make this work, but it has to be objective. And it was like day 89 or something like that. Had the heads of DOD come down, of state of North Carolina come in, and just the key folks in there, and about halfway through that brief, the developer said, we're pulling our request for permitting. It was that compelling. The thing is what the legislature did, and of course I'm an active duty Marine, so I can't, but what they did is they took that and they enacted legislation to do significant restrictions on wind and tall structures in the state of North Carolina. So it's very hard to get permitted in North Carolina. Now, there's no reason why something like that can't happen here. But I look at environmental impact studies. Where are they? I look at for wind and solar. Where are they? Really what's going on here, when you look at, and all this ties into the rewilding that's going on over in Fremont County with the buffalo, to the biodiversity that's taken a lot of our land out of production, right? All these global initiatives that are going on right now. Where's the environmental impact statement on study on these kind of things? And we just don't do them. It's one reason why the Chugwater project, okay, I'm going, helping those guys down there with that one. The Pronghorn H2 in Converse County, we don't want them. And, but the disposal of these things, and it's hard to find if they've been bonded, right? So you guys remember all the gas wells we have here in Campbell and Sheridan County? All those gas wells, remember that? Well, of course, then gas went through the floor, and all these guys went out of business, that they change hands. And it's the same thing with the wind, in a way, that, the original contract with whatever developer, pretty soon that's going to be sold to somebody else, sold to somebody else, sold to somebody else. So the original terms of this thing get washed away. Well, have these things been bonded or not? I don't know. It's hard to find whether they're bonded. Well, what happened over here, we know that we're the ones, the taxpayer are the ones that are capping all these gas wells all over the place. I know because I had 4 of them on my property, and I ended up having to cap them all, except for one, I turned into a water well. But the point is that where we are right now, that's why I want to stop it all. We got 4,000 more windmills coming to Wyoming. 4,000 more. Okay, 4,000 more, folks.
Where?
Well, we're the 10th largest state in the nation. We got a whole bunch of them. I mean, there's plenty of room out there. I don't want them here. It's the wind wall that basically extends. Has anybody heard of the wind wall? Okay, it's this imaginary wall of wind, and you guys all know the deal with the I-80 corridor. It's pretty much the I-80 corridor. And it goes from one side of the state to the next, and that's why they're putting all those turbines all over the place. Now, you also see them in Casper. As you go north of Casper going up toward KC, you see them there. You see them over at Bill. You see them in these other areas. And we know that the largest wind farm out there, potentially the largest wind farm in the world, is going to go in near Wamsutter. It does come down to one of those things that people come to Wyoming to get away from that. They do. There's an app right now, to my understanding. You guys can look this up, but I heard there's a brand new app out there on how to get to Yellowstone without seeing wind turbines. I mean, that's crazy coming through Wyoming. That doesn't make any sense, right? But I am very concerned about the environmental impacts of this. And it is one of those things. Okay, hey, I'm very familiar with the NEPA process. I've been associated with environmental impact studies in North and South Carolina, of course, Guam and the Marianas. Very familiar with how this process works. So it's like, okay, we've got this NEPA process for a reason. Now, a lot of us, it's been tough to get anything done, particularly if you're on the right side of the equation. But it's like, that NEPA process works for all sides. And I want to see what's going on here actually in the state of Wyoming. Is there any long-term effects? And we already know the answer to burying all these wind turbines here, because now Wyoming is the dumping ground for them all. We have all these open pits, right? Because we got so much coal, but a lot of it's deep. Some of it's deep now. And, is it worth going in there and mining that coal or not? Or do we just sell ourselves out and take everybody's wind turbine blades and then fill it up? That's kind of what we're seeing. And I don't want that. But these things have to be bonded. We got to go to DEQ and make sure that all these rules apply all the way across the board for all these different types of energy. It has to be market-driven energy. That's what it has to be. And right now, neither one of those are market-driven. We know that because all of our tax dollars are going to subsidize. They're so heavily subsidized. So I'm opposed to it.
They only have a 10-year lifespan.
They do. And so we're going to see monuments to failure all over this state. We will.
I mean, they're junk in 10 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Hundreds of gallons of oil each one has.
Yeah.
Like you said, the drainages, they
Yeah.
spring 8 leak, which a lot of them do.
Right.
But that never gets talked about or reported.
Well, and if a bald eagle flies into an oil derrick, right, they'll shut that derrick down. One flies into a turbine blade and it's crickets. Nobody says a thing. Yeah, I mean, it's crazy.
Or if I shoot one, I go to jail for years.
Yeah, probably so,
I
yeah.
think the CCP is working on your tax statement right now. And, but where does all this so-called electricity from all these thousands of windmills go?
It goes out of state.
That's right.
It goes out, 80+% of our energy gets punched out of
And we
state.
get nothing.
That's right, and there's no property tax being collected on any of those things either.
What?
And there hasn't been, for as long as they've been around. So it's like, okay, you want to keep the power, we power the state? Okay, I got you. You bet.
My understanding is that none of those are manufactured
Well, I'm
in
talking
the
even
United.
I'm talking even our power plants. Yeah.
Okay, but
Yeah.
these windmills
Yeah.
aren't even manufactured in the US, from my understanding. I can't remember
I
what the
think there's
countries
different developers on that. I don't know who's actually doing it,
Okay.
but the primary energy, of course, is our power plants.
Yes,
Right.
those,
Yeah, and that's primary. So that really needs to be shifted back to base load power, the gas and the coal. So we have consistent power, right? And that's what's killing our boilers in there, is because when you don't have that as base load power and you put base load as the wind and the solar, well, we know the sun doesn't always shine in Wyoming, and even when it blows too hard, you got to shut these turbines down or you'll overspeed them and they're no good anymore. So that's very, there's a lot of fluctuation there. That's why base power's got to go back to what it should be, right? And California will get the power we give them. If they don't like it, then I guess they go dark. It's just the way it is. Susan? Go ahead.
Kind of a road question. I can't remember, it was just a few months ago, we had a power outage where something happened in the southern part of the state.
Oh.
It shot the power and it shot lights out and turbines and, I mean, did we ever find out what that was?
Yeah, and it was explained to me, and I can't remember all the details, but it was over in Medicine Bow, around that area, where one of those things, and it had to do with, of all things, things shorted out, and it caused a fire in that transfer station, and then it just kind of spread all over the place, because I know there were like 90,000 homes that were without power on this side of the Big Orange, and but it was something like that.
It went all the way over and
Yeah.
floated up into Montana and it was like.
Oh, well, maybe this is a different one.
It was huge.
Was it that one? Yeah, that's what.
Okay, do you believe that story?
Well, I was down there. I mean, I saw what happened. I mean, I wasn't there. I didn't witness it. But yeah, and this. So when I talk about insulationism, okay, this is one of my biggest things with insulationism. I'm not an isolationist, guys. I love this country. Okay, but I don't like the fact that we are so dependent upon outside stuff. Okay, because we've got that 400 years of gas, oil, and coal, or 400 years of minerals underneath our feet, man. We can dictate our future. Okay, but we got to want to do it. I mean, we can grow anything in this state, just about. I don't like being on the national grid, but we're on the national grid. And I know this sounds simplistic, but when I first mentioned this a few years ago, guys thought I was crazy. Then a couple years later, they said, we may be able to do that. If the national grid gets compromised for whatever reason, and I know this sounds simplistic, but I want one switch to keep every light on in the state. And I know we can do it. But there's certain places that need to be hardened, some of those other things. There's some money that needs to be spent on figuring out how to do that. The thing is the guys who were critics of it before are now kind of coming on board, and the guys who are the electrical guys around the state who are credible. They're saying, yeah, we can do that. We just need to do certain things with our power grid here internally to where we can isolate. It's kind of like having, the solar panel on your house, right? You don't want to send power back through the lines. You just want to keep it inside. And that's kind of the whole point there. And, again, it just comes down to the will to do it, right? Of trying to make something like that happen, because it is, I look at agriculture as critical infrastructure. I mean, I look at all this stuff as critical infrastructure, and we need to look at it that way and put the attention on it. With it. So it was explained to me though, Susan, but I can't remember all the details, but it was something like that.
I have another question about ag. I keep hearing imports. But when you look at the numbers, we don't import. The beef that we eat in our grocery store and shows up in our restaurant,
it's American beef.
We don't know that for sure, though.
By a huge percentage. If you look at how much we raise,
Yeah.
how much we import, how much we export,
Okay.
most likely, it's highly likely that it's American beef. Where the problem is in the processing and the pressures being put on the rancher.
Yep.
And it might be American beef, but it goes through, as soon as it goes through the foreign processors, then it's not American beef.
Yeah, and whether it's Mexican, Argentinian, Brazilian beef, whatever, and the way this is being masked is these animals are brought into the country, they're finished here, and then, of course, they're slaughtered and packed here. Well, all of a sudden, this is American beef. And even though they want country of origin, that's why I want country of origin on all of our beef, lamb, anything like that.
I want the company that cuts my meat up and puts it in plastic to be American.
I agree. That's right. That's what we need. And that's one of the things with USDA. That's the key. Okay, because I'm looking around, I've been over the Lander place, there's a couple places around this state to where it's like, okay, what would it take to take you from small to mid?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not talking the big three now. It used to be the big four. Remember JBS, Tyson, Cargill, all this other stuff. You know, that basically have about an 85% monopoly on all beef. And then there's an outfit, somebody tell me the name, I can't remember it, south of Denver that's got about 70% of the lamb. To have that monopolized like that is, I mean, that's just wrong in my book.
Yeah.
The thing is we've been doing a lot of this to ourselves. Because when you look at stuff like the beef checkoff, some of these other things, and it's like, okay, well, this has been going to the national stock growers, which has kind of been promoting some of this consolidation, right? You look at why beef prices are the way they are right now, well, when you go from 4 to 3, naturally that's going to bring it up a little bit. And I'm glad that the growers are getting more money. But what I want to do here is cut out the middleman, so much of the middleman, to where, yeah, the growers get a lot more for their beef and their lamb, but the consumers spend a lot less right here. And that's why I want to keep as much of this in the state as we can. The trick there is when it comes down to the certification from the USDA and all this other stuff. There's a lot of regulatory things that need to happen to make this, and that's what I want to push, to streamline that process so we can have that mid-sized stuff to where we can pack our restaurants with, you know, if I want Wyoming beef on my table, I want Wyoming beef on my table. You know, that's just the way it is. And I want country of origin on all this. So it is something first and forefront, you know, on my very, to-do list, you know, to somehow make that happen.
I think processing, they're a bigger problem than importing.
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's why I want more of the processing here. I mean, we have the best beef and lamb anywhere in the world. I mean, it's all great. I mean, it's all raised right here, you know, and nothing tastes better than a blue rare steak, you know, that's, man, you know, Wyoming beef. But yeah, that's a big thing, getting our ag back. And then, of course, you know, looking at ad valorem taxes, you know, and these things with our ranches, with our farms, it's one reason why I really want to look at, you know, getting rid of this fuel tax particularly. In fact, I was down at Sinclair, some other guys who were refiners around the state who run our refineries. And I said, okay, the objective is farm diesel at $1.50 a gallon. How do we do it? How do we do it? How do we reduce the cost for our growers? Because we knew back in the mid-70s, a bushel of corn is pretty much the same as it is right now. You know, I mean, it's not much more now than it was back then. But a combine that used to be $30,000 is now $1 million. You know, a ton of fertilizer, which used to be maybe $100, is now $1,000. You know, and they're still getting paid the same amount. You know, and then you start asking the question, well, this is why they need crop insurance, because they can't afford to live. But then this crop insurance channels them down certain crops, and to qualify for crop insurance. But then if they don't get that crop insurance, they can't buy that new tractor, that new whatever it is. I mean, this whole system's completely backward. You know, and that's why I'm trying to reduce a lot of these costs, you know, across the board, because that production is only good for Wyoming. And of course, the revenue, there's always going to be some sort of sales tax or whatever it is on that. So, I mean, the state will eventually benefit from that, and so will the people, you know, so.
Just about fertilizer, I remember hearing that we're not, or that the Strait of Hormuz being closed down.
Oh, yeah.
Fertilizer's not able to come through. So I don't know if our country buys fertilizer
We do.
from other countries.
We do. In fact, Ukraine is one of the top, we get a lot of it. That's a great question. That's a great question. In fact, there was an initiative, and you're right on fertilizer. So down in Wheatland on Highway 26 there, there was a gal who was gonna put in a very large packing plant. Okay. Now, I don't know if this is gonna go or not. You guys may be familiar with it. But, one of the questions I asked her is what are you going to do with the manure? What are you gonna do with it? Because I wanted our growers to have first shot at it. Whatever it is, just put it on the market, whatever. I'm sure it'll go pretty quick. But when you're talking 3,000 cows a day, that's a lot of manure, to finish them off, pack them, and go from there. Regulatory, I think, is one reason. There's a lot of reasons why it may or may not go. I don't know. But that fertilizer is key. I mean, we've got, it's trying to get that nitrogen back in the, in the ground again. I don't know why we don't do it here. We can do anything in this country. I mean, God has given us an unbelievable nation to be able to do all of this, and we've outsourced it all. So I agree with you. But we do import a vast majority of our fertilizer. Say again?
It kind of seems crazy.
Oh, it does. It totally does. It totally
My
does.
neighbor brought over a couple of buckets full of them put in my garden a couple of years ago.
Yeah. Oh, I know. It's crazy. Yeah, and we can make anything. You look at, I mean, that's what made this country so great is the innovation, the freedom to fail, right? You can fail and fail and fail, and all of a sudden you succeed. Man, you can make a mint. That's the beauty of free market capitalism. But we've outsourced so much of that. It's really, we're not in a good spot. And I think at the executive level nationally, this is why he's trying so hard to get these tariffs going. But it's something that's going to take a while. People have to be patient with it because it is going to bring prices up in the short term. Long term, it should drop it back down quite a bit.
I thought the EPA had something to do with the fertilizer issue, because we lost our feedlot here because it was regulated that they were making too much manure and it affected CO in the atmosphere.
Is that what happened? Oh, it affected the CO2 level? Oh, my gosh. Oh, man, fake science, right?
What are we doing with fertilizer? That's on us, that's our EPA.
Oh, I'm with you. No, you're right.
So
Yeah.
we're in turn shutting outfits down in our country from producing it, but then we turn around and buy it.
Yeah.
Somebody's getting paid.
It's so lucrative. I mean, it's unbelievable what's going on. Yeah, so are you guys at all familiar with, and if you're not, I'll just explain it to you real quick. There's a big rewilding initiative that's going on in the state of Wyoming. Rewilding. Okay, now we don't live in the 1800s anymore. With the buffalo, with the bighorn sheep, depending upon which county. Fremont County is kind of the ground zero, if you will, for the buffalo. Eastern Fremont and part of Toronto over there are kind of ground zero for the bighorn sheep. Okay, those kind of things. If you guys are familiar with UN 2030, okay, it's all out there. It's all out there in open source. Okay, also known as the Biden 3030, which includes this wildlife corridor that goes from one national boundary to another. Okay, and it's all out there. This is all happening right now. Just because Trump's in there doesn't mean it stopped. Just because Trump's in there doesn't mean DEI went away. It's still all there, right? It's still all there. So we got to continue to fight against this stuff. But we're seeing a huge initiative with outside influences that are coming in here and trying to bring a bunch of buffalo in here. It's being led by a very special interest group over in Fremont County. And the objective there, and then if you look a couple years ago at the Sweetwater County BLM RMP, Resource Management Plan, where they shut down a bunch of BLM land for recreation, hunting, those kind of things. This was all part of it. And of course, the people went crazy over there, which they should have. And then they asked me what I do, and I'd say, we're not honoring any of it. We're not playing any of this game. But the whole thing is that whole wildlife corridor goes right through all those counties over there. But when you look at the bigger picture of Wyoming, it's the whole state. So it's just a matter of time before it comes over here. Well, the only way to make this work is people have to be removed from their land. That's the only way to make it work. They're this big Biden 30-30 thing or UN 30-30. So just because it's happening several counties over, doesn't mean it's not going to affect here at some point. So that's why we have to say no. This big biodiversity thing, this is a relatively new, but it's already at over $1 trillion. This is how lucrative this stuff is, and it's growing like crazy. So what they'll do is they'll come in, and I know specifically of a rancher over between Casper and Shoshone over there. Got the call, 22,000 acre ranch, something like that he's got over there. And the whole thing was, hey, we'll pay you between $400 and $1,000 per acre in biodiversity credits. And he's not the only one. This is going on around. I know this sounds crazy, guys, but it's already happening. And all you got to do is sign this contract. Well, send me the contract. I'll take a look at it. Well, before we send you the contract, you have to sign this NDA, non-disclosure agreement. And that's what he said. Well, hold on a second here. So they come in, every acre, they'll drill about a 4 or 5 foot hole. They'll determine how suitable that is for carbon sequestration, that particular acre. So that's 20,000 holes, 22,000 holes that would have been done on this. And then once you sign that contract, that entire ranch is taken out of production. No fishing, no hunting. If he was doing that, you can't run cows, you can't do anything. Okay, this is all being traded on the global market. This is very similar to what happened a few years ago with the NACs, Natural Asset Corporations, that thankfully never ended up on the New York Stock Exchange. But the whole thing is to buy futures in Yellowstone and Teton, the stuff underneath the ground. That's what's going on. This stuff's going. That's why we got to fight against this stuff. But that's why we have to change out the executive right now, because I'm totally opposed to all this stuff. And that's why we got to make sure we get the right leadership down there, legislatively, even locally, to where we understand what's going on and the threat to our state. Because, folks, it's not us that's important, okay? It's what's underneath their feet. That's what they're after here.
Yeah.
And so this ties in, and then, of course, with the apex predators, this is the other part about this biodiversity thing. And I will tell you right now, folks, that the bear, the grizzly, and the wolf need to be delisted. All these things do. The Mexican raven does. Of course, that's an international agreement with Mexico. That's one of the reasons why our sage-grouse population is down. It has nothing to do with solar farms or any of this other stuff. It's the Mexican ravens that also go after calves and peck out their eyes and their anus. Okay, but we have an international agreement with Mexico to keep these birds around. All right, well, I will tell you, I will definitely push for the delisting of these animals, particularly those apex predators. And I do believe that hunters, second,
How about the black-footed ferret?
what's going on with that?
Weston County is a big hot spot for that.
Okay.
Huge.
You got a whole bunch of them here, is that what you're
We have
saying?
none of them, we don't
Oh.
want any of them.
Oh. Okay.
They want prairie dogs, they want to build a prairie dog population large enough to support black-footed ferrets that never lived here.
So who's pushing this agenda?
The fort where the Fish and Wildlife, Human Fish, everybody, we've been fighting this for years.
Okay.
So when you say about that, we were in the Buffalo Commons. Excuse me, that was the Buffalo Commons, and we had the Sagebrush Rebellion. And, Weston County's been going through this for years, and nobody really has given a darn about us, but we did have the governor come through and help us, but that's what's happening here is black-footed ferret.
Okay.
We have 550,000 acres of the Thunder Basin grassland, and that's prime place to take over. And they tried very hard about 10 years ago. They made it look like a moonscape. You couldn't feed out there. There was no grass. There's nothing.
Okay.
And it was all because of the overpopulation of the prairie. So that they could and try to put in the black-footed ferret. The unfortunate thing is the 1800s, man brought in the bubonic plague. Thank God for that. Because what happens is black-footed ferrets are too susceptible to the plague. And so what they tried to do was to vaccinate every single prairie dog. Good luck.
That's insane.
It doesn't take one vaccination, it takes 2. So the world is a crazy, nutty place, and we've been going through it.
Yeah.
And nobody, we stomped our feet and blew snot out of our nose and did everything we could, and we still have some interesting things going on, but we're in the litigation right now.
Okay.
And we will be forever. So that, I mean, that's what NGOs do.
Yeah.
And so part of that is to always keep up that Wyoming has to stay on top of that and keep those NGOs from coming in, the Prairie Dog Federations and the Wildlife, the Sierra Club. Those are the people that are walking that walk.
They all, you're absolutely right. Okay, and what I'll do is, let me do some more research on that. I have heard of the Blackfoot, I'm trying to figure out but let me do more research on the impacts here. But what I will tell you with these NGOs, you're absolutely right. They all have to file articles of incorporation through the Secretary of State. Okay, and that's one of those things that, hey, can we suspend those or not? Which we can.
Also need to suspend the Liberty for All Act. And that sounds funny. I mean, it goes, excuse me.
Okay.
But what it allows is NGOs to have their legal fees paid.
You're absolutely right. That's right.
It sounds like they're just taking money for a bogus project.
No, it's not bogus. I know it's bogus.
I mean, they can't actually vaccinate every prairie dog. That's insane. Come on.
But, the key that everybody can do in here is stay informed on this stuff, pay attention to what's going on, because it's there's common issues all around the state. And every county has its nuances, you guys know the deal. And, but I tell you what, there's nothing wrong with going over to Campbell. There's nothing wrong with going down to Goshen to help if you need to get somebody elected, whatever the deal is, if you're satisfied with the folks here. Cross county, whatever it takes to get the right people in there, to help out and campaign for those folks. What else? Good, guys. We're gonna wrap it up here.
I was kind of happy before you started all these stats.
What's gonna what?
I was kind of excited and happy, and then you came in with all these stats.
Well, here's the thing: that's actually you're right. Here's the thing: is nobody's saying this stuff, and we have to make sure that folks understand the gravity of this election.
And why isn't our legislature paying attention to things that are important today and tomorrow,
Right.
instead of like bickering about whatever they bicker about?
Yeah, that comes down to leadership. It does. And it does come down to that. But it does come down to the governor saying, here's the rudder steer. This is where we're going. And he's got to lead that train, and we haven't had anybody do that for a long, long, long time.
When you did the David Iverson, and you said strategic plan.
Yeah.
I thought that was.
Well, and that's what we need for the state. It's one of those things that's, okay, I remember in Bar None here just recently, a year ago, Radiant Energy was going to come in, and I'll finish up with this. You guys all remember that? And everybody, that Radiant Energy, which was going to make modular nuclear reactors here in the state. Mm-hmm. Modular nuclear is nothing new. I mean, we've been doing it for a long time. A long time. And so before the second public comment meeting, a gal down there in Casper called and she said, hey, can you help me get people to Bar None? He called the right guy. Because very few people attended the first public comment meeting. And we filled that place in Bar None. Well, it was the first time those people had heard what was going on. They didn't want anything to do with it. They didn't want anything to do with it. And I think, and again, we don't get any tax revenue off it until 2046. There's no long-term permanent storage designated spot in the nation. There's a couple other things, but ultimately it comes down to consent of the governed, is what it comes down to, consent of the governed. The thing is, though, is, I made a post that this is bigger than just Bar None. Okay, this is the Natrium plant in Kemmerer. This is the sage grouse issue. This is the pronghorn H2. This is all these wind energy projects that are coming in here that require public comment period, kind of like you're talking about, sir. Require public comment period, public input. Okay, and the people are realizing that their input doesn't matter because the legislation, all the backdoor deals are pretty much done. But had the people been brought in from the get-go, had they known that, hey, this is kind of what we're looking at doing, then it could have been very different. Okay, now I'm not budget on this until we get those external factors done. That's just the way it is with nuclear for me. The thing is it comes down to what's the requirement and what's the purpose when we got 400 years of gas, oil, coal, and everything underneath our feet. And I just don't think Wyoming's ready for it yet. I don't want NRC coming in and running our state either, Nuclear Regulatory Committee. So, but anyhow, it's one of those things. Ultimately, it does come down to consent of the governed, And a bunch of those people who are smearing me because of my stance don't get it, that the people have to want this thing. We got to bring the people in from the get-go. And that's why with the strategic plan, whether it's, the 25-year plan, 50-year plan, whatever it is, because this is all coming out right, that we're working on right now. We're kind of working on a 25-year deal, 10, and as we get closer to execution year, obviously it becomes more finite, more fidelity, and this is what we're doing. And, but the people have to know, whether they like it or not, or whatever, or when I say like it or not, that's not exactly what I mean. Because that way people can at least feel part of the, be part of the situation, okay? Let them input, hey, here's what we're trying to do. We need input from the folks, but this is where we're going as a state. And there has to be some sort of plan to get there. Has to be. People have to be brought in from the get-go.
We need the information.
Go ahead. We've got a couple things.
Okay.
Can I say a couple things? I'd like to pass a hat around through the table, see if somebody wants to throw a couple dollars in it for your advertising.
Thank you, guys.
And if anybody wants a yard sign, we'll meet up with them, get them hooked up with a yard sign. And if you don't want to take it tonight, find me and I'll get one to you.
Now, you guys, I will tell you this. Thank you very much. This has been some really interesting dialogue here. If you guys have any questions, any comments, man, don't hesitate to call. Okay, BrentBien.com. My phone number's out there all over the place. And I'm all ears on a lot of these things. Ferret, some of these other issues. So please let me know.
Yeah, I want to tell you thank you for coming, and I really like your theory. Wyoming's the greatest state, and so I just want to encourage you. Thank you, and
Thank you,
I
guys.
hope you do well.
All right, thank you very much, guys. I appreciate it.
So if I haven't met you, I'm Susan, I'm Brent's wife, and I just wanted to thank you all for coming. It really means a lot to us. And I'm really glad to see so many people engaged and asking questions. I think that's so important. I had some people today, asking this morning some great questions, and that is just wonderful. And then I just wanted to put about the signs. If you would like a sign, we have them by the door. Just, grab one. The stakes are there as well. But we really appreciate you, and we really appreciate your involvement. We just want to encourage you to continue to be involved and hopefully support Brent.
August 18th.
August 18th. That's the only endorsement that matters is that day, August 18th, because it's you. That's who it's about. It's you, me, and it's us. So that really means a lot. So thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.